the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
Pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The voice of spirit.
The voice of spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you happen to be in the world. You're listening to Leo Bonomo on KCOR, and I'm very privileged tonight to have a lovely gentleman, Mr. Brian Mayne. And Brian's a world-leading whole brain success system and goal mapping expert, and he's given talks and is used by blue chip organizations such as Microsoft, Siemens, Disney, Coca-Cola, educational establishments, sport and fitness groups, health, personal development forums. He's a winner of the National Training Award in the UK and was also voted UK Speaker of the Year by the Academy Chief of Executives, and pursues a personal goal of helping lift 7 million lives. He's also an author, and he has produced 4 books in 8 languages, and his workshops and presentations, like his writings and recordings, are valued for being simple in their message, practical in application, and so effective at delivering transformative results. So I'm very, very pleased to introduce him to you. Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It sounds like a lot, doesn't it, when you go through it all like that?
Yeah,
I'm impressed with myself there.
Well, that's good. I did an interview with a gentleman called Jason Figgis, who's quite a well-known film, TV and documentary producer, and he'd done 22 films up to that point, and he'd actually forgotten how many he'd done himself. So I think when you're very busy in life, you just cram it in, don't you? And it's only when you start to look back, or you have someone like me picking it up thinking, oh my God, what a lot I've done. And do you think the amount of work that you've done is also because of your goal mapping systems that you've created? Do you think that enables you to just plow through the work as well as achieve as much as you have?
Yeah, I think, one, it helps me on a personal basis to be my best, along with the other systems and personal development I've learned. And also it has become very popular, which has resulted in me being invited to go and work with large organizations and schools and speak at various events and indeed write the books. I really haven't done much marketing over the years. It tends to have been people recommended me, and it started just with a few presentations 24 years ago, and it's rolled along since there, really, and built momentum to the point now where not only am I going out speaking on a regular basis about the techniques, but there are a lot of people around the world that teach my systems, that they've been on the certification program and either train it or coach it. And so the work's ongoing in lots of countries by lots of people, whether I'm doing it or not, basically.
And again, I think that's a wonderful thing, because tell us a little bit about your background, because you are from a travelling fairground family, aren't you? And I know that obviously that's a nomadic kind of way of living, and you left school early, and at one point, at 29 years old, you were £1 million in debt, weren't you? So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, to me, and I think to a lot of people, that would seem quite incredible to have the world on your shoulders from that. And if you don't mind me mentioning, it is on your site anyway, but, still relatively unable to read or write. And to me, that's just inspirational that you can sort of dig yourself up from that. So tell us a little bit about that. It's very interesting.
I was born into a travelling family, and originally a lot of the fun fair people, or in America, I know you've got a lot of obviously American listeners, carnies, as they're known in America. A lot of them would have originally come from gypsies, and my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents operated fun fair equipment from place to place. I'm related to two of the oldest circus families in England, and I grew up in that life. And every year I would have 3 different homes. I would have one travelling around with the carnivals, the travelling fun fairs, and that would be for about 4 months each year. I would have another home at the seaside, a small island down in the south of England called Isle of Wight. And my father would go there every summer to open up for the tourist trade at a little town called Ventnor. And then I had a third home near to London by Heathrow Airport, and that was our winter base. And so growing up, 3 different homes each year and 3 sets of friends, about 4 months on each, 4 months on the fun fairs, 4 months during the summer season on the Isle of Wight, 4 months by London at our winter base. And that meant lots of different schools each year and no school while we travelled. And as is typical for most travelling children, I left school early. I only went to school for about 5 months each year, divided between 2 different schools, no school while we travelled. Dropped out of school at 13, which is typical for the travelling kids because they leave school early to go and work with the family and help run the family business. The reason they do that is because there is no formal employment on the travelling fun fairs. It's self-employed existence. My 13th birthday present was a rocket-shaped bubblegum machine and a box of bubblegum and the keys, and my father taught me about business. He taught me empty the coin from the bubblegum and use that coin to buy more bubblegum, and that was my initiation. I have dyslexia. So on top of moving around and changing schools, I really struggled. There were some good teachers, and my father paid for me to have a private tutor, but I just couldn't get it. And so I never learnt to read and write. And obviously leaving school at 13, I left with no qualifications.
Yeah, and to go from that to influencing big business. I mean, Microsoft, Siemens, Coca-Cola. I know you've done BT as well, British Telecom. These are big, powerful, rich organisations, and to go from sort of dyslexia and that to influencing huge conglomerates like that to make more money just seems incredible, and it shows the effectiveness of what you've learned and how influential you've become.
Well, what happened was when I left school at 13, I started working with my father full time, and I helped run the family business. And my father couldn't read or write either, but he was quite entrepreneurial. And gradually, the tourist business on the Isle of Wight grew. And we gave up the fun fair business when I was about 18. And I took the family business in a new direction. I become the youngest person in England to be given a license to open a disco. And I was given the license at 18, which is, the youngest you could possibly do it because of the law. You can't drink under 18, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I opened the disco when I was 19. And the disco became very successful. And I ran the disco for 13 years. We were in a lot of music magazines, and people would come from all over the country. And I actually become very, very wealthy at a young age. But then life changed dramatically for me at around about age 29. And that change was tourism. Tourism, my customers, people between 18 and 30 that were coming to the disco, stopped taking their holiday on the Isle of Wight because in the late 1980s, it was the beginning of affordable airfare, and they all started going to the Mediterranean, Spain, Greece, Italy, places where the sunshine was guaranteed because the English summers are not so good, not so predictable, although this summer's lovely, but you can't always rely on it. And of course, it was where all of their friends were going, and there was a lot of partying there. And so the industry I was in, the nightclub industry, just died, and tourism died, mass tourism, in the Isle of Wight. And so I went from being worth a lot of money at about age 25 to owing a lot of money at age 29. And I lost everything. My home was repossessed. My possessions, things like my car, was repossessed. It wiped out the whole family. My marriage ended under the pressure. And so I found myself at age 29 on government income support, £1 million in debt, couldn't read and write, no qualifications because I'd left school early. And I was in a world of fear. I just didn't know what I was going to do, to be honest. And I was offered a job as a salesperson, and it was commission only. So if you didn't sell anything, you didn't earn anything. And I was hopeless at it. I joined the sales company in desperation, but I didn't sell anything, mainly because I was a real miserable, moaning person at the time about how my life had gone wrong. And people like to buy things from happy and positive and upbeat.
Absolutely. Not that anyone would blame you. I think, being in that particular boat, you'd think, oh my God,
I was so afraid. So afraid.
Yeah.
Now, it turned into a great blessing. And the blessing was the sales team I joined put on a personal development workshop. And they brought in a guy who was a real pioneer of teaching the science of positive thinking. And I didn't want to go to the workshop, to be honest. I was very closed to anything personal development or new age. I just thought it was nonsense. I wasn't at all spiritually minded. Yeah. And I only went to the workshop because I was given the choice by my manager of going to the workshop or leaving the team.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that. It was like there was a positive incentive.
Yeah. I went with a closed mind, is the truth of it. However, the information that this guy was sharing was just very hard to argue with. He made it very simple, down to earth. And in particular, what he shared with me was the science of how, when you think positively, it stimulates your brain cells to release a chemical called serotonin, which gives you the feeling of happiness. It's the same chemical that's released if you take an antidepressant like Prozac. And it also acts as a neuroconductor. It bridges the synaptic gap. It joins the brain cells together, basically. And it helps you to find answers to problems. And I didn't realize there was a science to positive thinking. I thought it was just a piece of advice that somebody rolls out every so often, like, be happy. I didn't realize there was a science that I could learn and a strategy that I could use. And of course, they were teaching this to boost motivation and performance in the salespeople. But what I saw was, here is something that I can use to find answers to the many problems I'm facing, not just the problems of my huge amount of debt, but also maybe this is a way of overcoming my learning problems and teaching myself to read well. And so that was the first goal that I set. Learning to read. And I didn't go back to school or night class. The guy that was teaching this stuff became my mentor. He took a liking to me, and he started showing me how I could use it to help myself learn. And within a year, I'd learned to read, and within a short while, I'd learned to speed read. I was so excited about learning to read at age 30. Yeah. In adult life, most people take reading and writing for granted because they've been doing it many years. But if you can't read and then suddenly you can, it feels like a magical thing. And I had a hunger for knowledge and information because it hadn't been accessible to me in the same way. And there wasn't really audio books back in those days, sort of 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to read everything, but this guy started to feed me his books about self-improvement and personal development, and I just become fascinated in that subject and also how the brain works. And I wanted to read more and more about that. And the more I read, the more techniques I learned, the more I used them to improve my life. And my performance figures within the sales team rose to be the highest. And lots of people wanted to know how I'd achieved that. And so I started to make presentations about what I had learned in all the different books I was reading, the presentations and becoming a trainer.
Yeah, there was a slight drop there, and I wasn't sure what was happening, but yeah, just a glitch, I think, and I think that's really inspirational in itself, you know, and I think if you learn to read and write as a child, I think you take that as a normal kind of part of childhood, and I think yes, it's nice that you discover little books and things, but I suppose to an extent that becomes part of that way of growing up. But I think from what you experience as a nightclub owner, and then discovering this joy of reading, it must have felt like the whole world just opened up. Really exciting to discover that.
It was two things. The first thing was it gave me a real lift in my self-esteem. And you'll find that most adults or children that can't read and write well have low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because the feeling that it generates in you is that you're not as good as other people. Most other people can do something that you can't. They can read and write. And so when I learned to read and write at age 30, that gave me a huge lift in how I felt about myself. The other big change was it gave me a practical tool. And I wanted to read everything at first just because I could.
Yeah.
But I very quickly latched on to, I'm going to read more personal development. And as I read more and more personal development books, I realized they were all saying the same thing. And what they were saying was that lasting success is not an accident. You can have a chance, random success like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
But long-term success over a period of years, living a successful life, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens on purpose. And very much it starts with the thoughts that we think and the attitudes that we live by, and that influences our behavior. And through our thoughts and feelings and behavior, we start to influence and shape our life around us. And so that was a big eye-opener for me, because I had thought that success was largely luck. And I'd been very successful, but I thought maybe I've had all my luck and it's run out now and no more is coming. So to learn that you can create it and it's purposeful was a huge thing for me.
Yeah, I can see how influential that would be, because again, taking a slightly negative tone to that, we see the destructive influence of bullying, of perhaps childhood influences in other ways. My great grandfather was a self-made millionaire. My dad spoke 5 languages fluently, wrote in 5 languages.
Wow.
Didn't really have that push to become successful. And so what I was originally indoctrinated with was work hard, basically work yourself to death, be honest, and that's the way to get through life. And looking back on it now, I can understand he's thinking of work hard and you'll get somewhere. But there was also that mentality of you can half kill yourself, and as long as you get through. And that was an influence which at the time it seemed a good idea. It seemed logical. Work hard, you'll be okay. But I've gradually learned, it's something the Americans are fond of saying, don't work harder, work smarter. And so I think that's something also that you discovered. So we're influenced by a lot of things, sometimes negatively, aren't we? Whether, we're bullied or people say, oh, you're useless, you'll never do it, and people laugh at our plans. So for you to have been, I think, one end of the scale educationally, and then have that success and it in a sense cruelly taken away, but of course it's an experience. You've had the a real balance, haven't you, from one thing to something completely different?
I have, and my view now is that spiritually it was meant to happen.
Absolutely.
There is a story behind the story which I will share before our interview is done. And although I've done a lot of work with big organizations like Microsoft, the techniques that I teach are built on spiritual principle and spiritual law. And I had a very intense spiritual experience when I learned to read, within 1 year of learning to read, that completely changed me as a person almost overnight and put me onto a new life path. So it wasn't just the practical ability of learning to read, it was having this spiritual experience and getting in touch with a sense of purpose about what I thought I was meant to do with my life, and a deep feeling of gratitude for being given a second opportunity when it seemed like everything had been lost.
Yeah, and again, I think people that have had that kind of motivation are very much influenced by it, and that in itself is a life-changing thing. And I think for you, as you say, I think it was meant to be. I think it was really blessed that you had tasters of this, and it showed you what life could be like, but you've kind of discovered how it should be. So I think that's wonderful. We're going to go into a break in a minute, Brian. So if anyone wants to ask Brian, you can dial in on 323-641-3687 if you want to ask. But we'll just go into a break and we'll be straight back after this.
This is the voice of spirit, your connection to the other side.
To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination.
Explore with us by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined.
Back with your guide to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Leo Bonomo.
After these brief words from our sponsors.
Have you ever wanted to connect with your spiritual guides or celestial family? Join Joanna L. Ross on Universal Unity, New Earth Consciousness, every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Let Joanna show you how to raise your vibrational frequency, activate your DNA, and merge with the fifth dimensional frequencies as we align with Source and our soul's blueprint as well as divine purpose. It's time for change and start the magical and mystical journey of the ascending human. Universal Unity, New Earth Consciousness, Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and 1 p.m. Eastern, only on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Looking for a radio show like no other?
We need something brand new.
Then tune into the KCOR Digital Radio Network, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and get ready for The Quantum Shift. A great shift of consciousness is sweeping across the Earth. Are you ready for the dimensional shift?
It is amazing, is it not?
The Quantum Shift.
Hosted by Dr. Sam Muggsy, Kent Dunn, and Drake Bailey.
Be part of the fifth dimensional reality, where consciousness prevails and the universal law of one is the only true reality. The Quantum Shift. Live Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. How could you not love him?
Hamilton the Pug's adoption story started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Live for 3 hours every Saturday night. It's a show that engages the mind, makes you think, and maybe even challenge what you think you know. Hi, I'm Jeremy Scott of Into the Paranormal, where we talk about topics that are anything but mainstream, somewhere between abnormal and paranormal. Bring an open mind and join us for Into the Paranormal, live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
KCOR Las Vegas.
All the time.
Of course I listen.
I listen all day. It's the best music.
KCOR, the new underground source for news, talk, and music at KCORradio.com. Tell your friends, email them, or Facebook them, or Twitter them.
Hey, are we done here? Because I'm losing my buzz.
Welcome back to the Voice of Spirit, your connection to the other side.
There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it.
Connect with us on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us live in our chat room at KCORradio.com. To get a free reading during the show, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers, use Skype name KCOR Radio. And now, inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, very warm welcome back. I'm talking this evening to Brian Mayne, and that's spelled Mayne. And if you'd like to know more about Brian, you can go to Brian Mayne, BrianMayne, all one word, .com. And Brian's an inspirational speaker of note, really. He's worked for and advised lots of large companies like Microsoft, Siemens, Disney, Coca-Cola, some of the biggest corporations in the world, and is appreciated for what he's done for them. And they obviously find it very effective. So welcome back, Brian.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you. So there are a couple of things that you do. There's goal mapping, which is used by blue chip organizations. You also do something called life mapping. Tell us a little bit about how you develop that. And before the break, you were also talking about a spiritual kind of experience that changed your life. So maybe lead with that and then tell us about the goal mapping and life mapping.
Okay. When I learned to read, at first I was reading just very basic personal development books. But quickly my reading went deeper and deeper. And what I become more and more drawn to was more ancient spiritual writings before sort of structured religion. So very early Christianity, Gnosticism, and the inner teachings such as Tantra or inner teachings around Sufism, for instance. And I started to practice different meditation techniques and just working with my mind in different ways because I become interested in what was possible. And then one evening I had this experience where in meditation I was shown my future, like seeing a movie screen. And my friend who was with me went into trance and started to speak and told me, the spirit spoke through him, told me, here is your future. And I saw myself going around the world, speaking to a lot of people, writing books and teaching a combination of personal development and spirituality, so that the personal development became the practical application of the spiritual techniques to ground it. And it was a life-changing experience. It started at about 8 o'clock in the evening, and when I came back round to normal consciousness, it was about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
I was soaked through with tears where I'd cried so much. And I was never quite the same afterwards. I told a lot of people about the experience because it was completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And most of them, of course, ridiculed me. And a lot of my friends disappeared. And my parents wanted me to get professional help because they thought I'd lost my mind. And most people thought I'd had some type of nervous breakdown because my life had changed so much. But I knew that I'd just experienced the most important thing that had ever happened to me. And I believed what it was that I was shown, and I gave myself to spirit at that point. And I took a very practical approach, and I was still very scared, and I couldn't quite see how I could possibly go from where I was, having only just learnt to read and write at age 30, to being someone that was going to go around the world and speak and talk. And I was sat on my bed one morning, not long after the experience, maybe a few weeks, in tears, just because I was so overwhelmed. And this voice in my head said, it will be simple. You will develop yourself as a person. You will create some unique material. You will share it with the world. And within a few months, I received an invitation to go and work for the Anthony Robbins organization, Tony Robbins, that had set up in London. And I wasn't drawn to it, but I knew that that was my first step within my journey, and it was being shown to me as a spiritual step, and that was my initiation into teaching personal development on a practical basis. Within a year, I'd been selected as one of the people to be trained in teaching another American's work, Stephen Covey, and I started to teach a program called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that took me into working with large businesses and corporates. And then driving my car late one night through London, deeply contemplating the question, why are we not teaching goal setting to our children as standard in schools? Because it is a science, and there is a right way and a wrong way. And I was thinking for many months, what is the best way of setting goals, and why does it work so well for some people and not for others? And I suddenly had a flash come into my mind, which was the goal mapping system. And you've seen it. It's a very distinct tree-looking structure. And a goal map is always created using a combination of words and pictures to help activate both sides of the brain. And I knew when I saw that flash that this was something very important for me. And it took me many months to work out. I had to reverse engineer the flash that I'd seen in my mind and create it into a training program. And I offered it to the training organization I was working for, and they didn't want it. The Robbins organization, they said no. And what makes you think you've come up with something of interest here? And so I left the organization and I set up, good for the self-esteem. I set up on my own in 1995. And as synchronicity would have it, I was offered an opportunity to go and run the program for a communications company here in England. And it really snowballed on from there. And from that one company, through the power of recommendation, it spread out to lots of organizations like British Telecom and Siemens and Disney and Microsoft and Coca-Cola. And I learned how to teach this goal mapping program, which is actually a very spiritual program. I learned how to teach it in a very practical way so that it would be accepted by big business and by schools. And I learned when to share my spiritual story and when not, because sometimes it would be detrimental in getting the audience to accept what I was saying. And so if I had a spiritually minded audience, I would be very open about my story and what had happened to me and how goal mapping was a spiritual technique. But if it was a hard-nosed corporate audience or academic audience that had no openness for anything spiritually minded, then I would just make the workshop about the science of positive thinking, the science of goal setting, and how you program your subconscious mind for success, all of which the system does very well. And it sits on its own website, which is goalmapping.com. And because if people go to my website, they'll find lots of things about me, but not so many things about the technique. And there are 1,300 people around the world that teach the system, which is why we have it on its own website. A year later, the life mapping system came. And again, it uses words and pictures, but it's focused on a different aspect of success. It has a different structure. Goal mapping looks a little bit like a tree with branches and presents hanging off of it. And a life map is in the form of a mandala. A goal map is focused on achieving physical things. A life map is focused on developing yourself as a person. Both of them are designed to send a command to you, your subconscious mind, to help you achieve what you want and be your best, as well as through the law of attraction to influence universal consciousness and draw towards you those people, situation and substance that are the reflection of your intention.
And I just love the way that you put that. I find quite amusing, the fact that you were working with this Robinson Foundation, and they've said, well, what do you think you've got? We're not interested, because it is something that I'm sure most of us have faced that wall in life. We've had sudden inspiration. The light bulb's gone on and we thought, oh my God, and we work on a system sometimes for years, and then we proudly take it up to an organization who we would hope has the foresight and understand that you have been inspired and would help you, and of course they've gone not interested, because I think that would be devastating. But I suppose to you it just underlined the fact that whatever that company was doing, it wasn't doing it right. And so,
it was an individual within the company that said no. And since that time, I have been invited often by Tony Robbins as a guest speaker to go to America and speak in his conferences on goal mapping.
Fantastic.
So it's gone full circle from from one of his trainers saying no and me walking away to being invited back by Tony Robbins himself to go and make presentations for his top people. And I've presented for Tony Robbins in America and Australia and New Zealand and Africa and a whole bunch of places. But you'll see that principle again and again. And Microsoft themselves became successful because they took something that other companies didn't want at the time because they didn't think it was very good, such as IBM not being interested in the program side because they're only interested in the hardware. And it made Microsoft what they are. So it's a familiar story in lots of ways. And I read a quote earlier today, actually, that every great new idea looks crazy at first. A quote by Abraham Maslow. And when we come up with something new, people often dismiss it. When I came up with goal mapping and the idea that you need a combination of words and pictures to set goals, so it activates both sides of your brain, the right brain that thinks in pictures and the left brain that thinks in words, people were not open to it at first. But of course now dream boards have become very popular, very accepted, and a lot of organizations use imagery now as part of their creative thinking training. And if you look at how computers have changed from the early days when it was all words and codes and MS-DOS, and now it's all about windows and icons and pictures. You go to any airport and it's a combination of words and pictures because the imagery is universal. And your subconscious mind, like universal conscious mind, is holographic and it thinks in pictures. When you go to sleep at night, it's your conscious mind that goes to sleep. Your subconscious keeps working and produces dreams. And regardless of what language your conscious mind speaks, and I'm very impressed with your father speaking and writing 5 languages, when he was asleep with his conscious mind, his subconscious will have come to the surface and produced dreams, and those dreams would have been in pictures. And it's the same for everyone around the world. And if we want our subconscious to work with us and help us to achieve our goals, we must make sure that our written words are also in a language form of pictures and symbols that our subconscious can understand and work with us and help us.
And again, I think that's such a fantastic thing because mediums, most mediums would have mind pictures, and the way that I work in a very strange way as a medium because I work in effectively what would be bits of a puzzle, and I don't know.
Clairvoyant.
I'm clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. I've got all 5 plus the 6th sense as well, and so the way that
synesthesia, a mixing of the senses.
Absolutely. And so the way that I work is I may get part of a visual image, I may get part that's audio, I may get part that's taste, that's smell, and it's just fragments that come from any direction, and I'm never really aware of where the next piece of information is coming from. For me, that keeps me alive because it keeps my attention. I don't know where it's coming from, so I'm kind of open to anything from any direction. Lots of mediums, they will work either clairaudiently, clairvoyantly, they will see mind pictures. But of course, it is the mind, as you say, the visual that takes on part of that message, and it's the left side that starts to analyze what it's got. Is this okay? Because we do have to have a filter. You know, people swear a lot in general life. Sometimes a spirit will come through. That's the way they talk. But obviously, we can't express that on stage. We can just say that he swore like a trooper or whatever. So there is a natural filter there. So for me, although I understood that before, it's now given me a slightly different aspect of how mediums work through what you've explained there. So I do find this fascinating.
I think that regardless of the sense, the spiritual intuition and message is very much received through the right side of our brain.
Yeah.
And I go and present quite a lot in Italy. And I don't speak much Italian, but I know that the Italian for right is destra, which is where we get the word destiny from. Because even in ancient times and Latin, it was recognized that the right in the brain was the angelic. It was all of the higher emotions. The left in Italian is sinistra, which is where we get the word sinister from, because the left was considered to be the beast within man, the animal instinct. And the left side of the brain is very much home of the ego. It's also the side of the brain we use for words and linguistics. And I think when we receive spiritual message, it's coming in through the right side of the brain. But to verbalize it, to put it into a structure, we're needing to move it to the left side of our brain. And in doing so, we do pass through a filter. And of course, we do influence or color the message slightly in doing so.
Yeah. And again, I find that fascinating. I'm half Italian. I used to speak Italian fluently when I was certainly at 11, because
did I pronounce the words okay?
You did actually, yes. And not that I'm an expert on Italian, but yes, you did. And at age 11, I'd come back from Italy and started secondary school and couldn't speak a word of English. So I had to sit at the back of the class for a couple of weeks till it gradually came back. And unfortunately, although I've tried to revive it a few times, it's kind of when I go back, it very faintly kind of kicks in again. But it's enhanced my understanding of, as you say, the Italian words of left and right. And it's fascinating how the whole thing kind of kicks in. So it's just amazing. I learn something every day, thank God. And I've learned a few things already in speaking to you.
I've had two really good teachers in my life. And the first one was the guy who taught me all about positive thinking and self-improvement and the early things around goal setting. And sadly, he died very young. He was a real pioneer in this country, a guy called Mike Rosewarne. He died very young, and I wasn't. I'd reached a level of success by the time he died, but not the things that I've now achieved. And then my second great teacher was a lady, an Italian lady, who I met 19 years ago, and she's still very much in my life, and she's adopted me like part of her family, like I'm another son. Her name is Bruna Ferrari, and she has been my spiritual teacher, and she is like my second mother. And I go at least once a year to Italy to spend time with her and work with her, and she has been instrumental in guiding my path for sure. So Italy's played a huge part in my journey. And then in more recent years, Scandinavia. I started going to Scandinavia in 2010, and it has been life-changing for me. And there is a deep, pure spiritual quality there, I find. They call clairvoyance and clairaudience, they're clearly seers.
Yeah. It's a very, very spiritual country. And I did an interview with a lovely Swedish lady called Marion Damper Jean, and she was talking about how advanced spiritually they are in the Nordic countries. Very much more in many ways than even England or the States, and so it's been quite a revelation to me for that. One thing I found very interesting that you said, and perhaps we'll explore it a bit more after the break as well, is that it would be wonderful if we could teach this system in schools, because every country wants to be successful. I think a successful country produces successful people, but somehow it's geared, I feel, to enslavement. We're not taught, well, actually, yes, it would be nice to own your own home, but what a mortgage means. My own daughter, who's graduating soon, they leave college and university with many thousands in debt, and so we're kind of geared to being enslaved in that way. And I think what you would teach, which is possibly why it's not taught yet, is that we can be successful in different ways.
My system is taught in schools. There are more than 1 million school children from 12 different countries that have been through the goal mapping. But it is not standard. It is down to individual schools to ask for it. It's not part of a national curriculum. And I have had a number of meetings with senior education officials in Scandinavia, and Finland has the best education system in the world. They're top of the league tables. Wow. To see if we can get a much more fuller rollout of the program in those countries. And so it's quite sporadic, but the children's program has been running for the last 17 years. And there is a parents' version that parents can run with their children at home. My best-selling book is a book that I wrote for children. Plus I have a parents' workbook and a student workbook, so they can do the goal mapping system within their own family.
That's fantastic. And they're on Amazon, aren't they? So
the children's book is called Sam the Magic Genie. And you can get it on Amazon, and it's in lots of languages, and it's a book for all ages. So adults as well as children.
I think that's wonderful, because again, I think if we are becoming more spiritual as a race, and I think if we can extend that and then find that we have this formula for success that we can just instill from the word go, it's not only life changing, it's world changing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I've really seen in my 24 years that I've been presenting how consciousness has changed, particularly in big businesses. They were very closed to anything personal development or spiritual, and that has completely opened up now.
That's fantastic. Brian, we're just going to go into a break now. We'll be straight back after this.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
Pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The Voice of Spirit.
The Voice of Spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way and that furthermore this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, very, very warm welcome back. If you'd like to ask Brian any questions, you can call into the studio, of course, and it's 702-425-9230. I was just talking with Brian during the break about this system, which is so adept at using our minds fully, of organising pictures and words together in a system that is so effective, because it is how we operate. Welcome back, Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's as I was saying there, it's a very natural system, isn't it? And it's you know, I'm surprised countries hadn't utilised this before, but I understand from what you're saying, different companies that it's a very, very successful thing. How do you create more goals for yourself, because you're very, very successful? You're obviously not one to sit on your laurels. So what are your plans for the next few years? What are your goals?
My main goal has been for many years to help lift 7 million lives with the systems that I teach. And there are 4 systems: goal mapping, life mapping, action mapping, self mapping. Goal mapping is about achieving things. Life mapping is about developing yourself as a person. Action mapping is about changing habits and interacting with other people. And self mapping is more spiritual, and it's about becoming your true self. The 4 systems fit together. And my goals are really centered around reaching as many people as I can. We make the basic material free, myself and the other trainers. There's a free online program, free video, free audio, because I have felt very grateful over the years that somebody helped me. It has been a spiritual mission for me, and I've wanted to help as many others as I could to improve their lives in some way. And of course, it's everybody's choice and responsibility how they use the systems. I teach them in a very general way, but there are a lot of other people, nearly 1,300 people around the world teaching them, and different people focus the techniques for different areas of life. So some people are combining the systems with spiritual teaching. Some people are combining the systems with business teaching, sales training, sports training, yoga, well-being, all sorts of therapy. And so they're very, very universal in that way. And when I'm setting goals, the thing that I always try and do is to get away from my ego and head and into my heart. And I ask one key question: is this goal for the highest good of myself and the highest good of others? And if I'm feeling in my heart the answer is yes, then I set it down as a goal. And I don't get too hung up on when. Obviously, if you're in a team and it's a business type goal, it's important to have a date. Having a date is what makes a goal a goal. But if I don't achieve the goal by the date, I don't get too stressed about that. And I certainly don't look to force it with ego into existence by the date that I've chosen. I've been very influenced by a lot of the early spiritual writings around goal setting and goal achievement. And in early Christianity, in Gnosticism, mystical Christianity, it's known as a movement with repose. And what that means is set the intention of what it is you want to achieve, but have a repose, have an ease about how you move towards it so that you find your flow. In Sufism, it's called an effort with ease. In the East, it's called wu-wei, the flowing way. It is goal setting. It's about holding an intention of what you want to achieve. but not the rigid, hard way that was so predominant in the 1990s. And you still see it sometimes, that sort of make it happen with personal power at all cost approach. You know, that's more of the ego. And I believe that consciousness is shifting now much more towards a balance with spirit. And so I've always taken that approach over the last 20 years, and it's in the principles of goal mapping.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely spot on, because I've manifested a lot of things for myself, and I do understand that it has to be done when the time is right, you know, when spirit, when it fits in nicely, and not, as you say, the ego as we want. Because if we kind of stress a certain point in time, which can be just not achievable in any way. You know, I was talking to someone about they wanted to win the lottery and this and that. So, well, you know, send the thought out, and it's kind of like, well, I want this in 6 months, and I mean, it could happen. But when you introduce stress into that,
I see people making goals happen by the time that they've said it will happen. It's that sort of make it happen, do whatever it takes to make it happen. And they do it, and they pay a very high price for making the goal happen. And often they achieve the goal, but they do a lot of damage to themselves and others in forcing the goal into existence at a time when it wasn't right and in a way when it wasn't right, rather than allowing the flow. And the flow does require that you hold an intention. I meet some people that don't really understand, you use the right word, manifestation. A lot of people don't really understand the principles of creation and manifestation. And they think that being in the flow means you have no intention. That's not correct. You have an intention. Being in the flow is an intention. It is a goal. I'm going to live my life in the flow. If you have no intention, sometimes the flow is taking you somewhere you don't want to go. So it's very important you end up in a stagnant pool or over a rapid. It's very because the flow can go to many places. So it's very important to have an intention. And every great spiritual leader that's ever walked the planet had an intention. They had a purpose. They had an aim. They also had an easygoing flow in how that manifests. And it's the balance, again, between left brain and right brain. Right brain being flow, left brain being structure. Find the balance between the two, and it makes us effective. And you see this in great individuals throughout history. They have this balance within themselves, and it's very much a balance within their consciousness that brings balance to their life. You read the ancient texts. It's not about just holding a thought and manifesting that thought through the law of attraction. The ancient texts are very clear. Through thought, word, and deed, we make and shape our world. So thought, feeling, and action. It's not just the thought on its own. It starts with consciousness. Then we amplify the intention with our emotions, and then we amplify it further with our physical actions. And through those three, thought, feeling, and action, we manifest our chosen reality.
Yeah, because it is important to be proactive, isn't it? You know, I was doing a reading. I don't remember readings generally unless there's a particular lesson in it for me or my students. And I was doing a reading for a lady, and she'd wanted a partner. You know, she'd been alone for some time, and I said, well, you know, there is someone there for you, but you need, she hadn't told me this, but I said, you know, you need to be able to get out, you know, you need to mix with people. And that was something she did find quite difficult. She kind of almost became a hermit. And I said to her, look, you know, the chances of a knight in shining armour knocking on your door are quite slim. You have to encourage the universe. You have to be proactive and go out. And it's something that she understood, but she also found quite difficult to do. And it goes back, I think, to what you were saying about we create all kinds of habits, bad habits. Do you see a habit as a mind settling on a way of dealing with something and just locking onto that and finding it difficult to shake off?
I think a habit is always the combination of thought and feeling and physical behavior. Thinking the same way is a habit, feeling the same way as a habit, behaving the same way as a habit. If you take a physical habit like smoking or drinking or biting your nails or any of those things, it won't be just the physical behavior. There will be a thought or a belief, a feeling or an attitude that is also connected with the behavior. And if we want to change some aspect of ourselves, then we need to work at all three levels. And this is what I do in my workshops. And this is why I have more than one mapping system, because we need to look holistically at the whole person, not just their behavior, not just their consciousness, and not just their emotions. It's all three together that shape our self, which is the fourth program, self-mapping, where you're really looking at the soul and the spirit level. And I believe that spirit applauds action. So we may receive guidance and we may go into ourself and get in touch with our inner guru and receive intuition. We still need to act on that, because otherwise there is no growth. And we are here to grow. We're not just here to observe and to bimble through life. We're here with a purpose. And there may be a mission for us, like I believe mine is helping a lot of people with the systems that I've been given. And I haven't sat down and created any of my systems. They all came as insights or in meditations. And then I worked out what it was that I'd seen and started teaching them. And through teaching the systems, I learned more and more about them. But we are here to serve a purpose. And that prime purpose is to be all we can be, to grow as people. In other life forms, and I've got a beautiful plant at the side of me where I'm sat in my home, that plant is going to be the best plant it can be. It's encoded into the genetic of the plant. Like a tree, the tree is going to be the best tree it can be, because it has no free will, it has no choice around that. Humans have a very high level of free will, and it means that we are free to be our worst or our best. And so really the spiritual imperative, the prime purpose we are all born with, is to be the best we can be. And that means growth, and it often means doing things that we don't want to do, like your lady needing to go out into the world. But that's what's required if she wants to grow as a person and to gain the prize of finding her soulmate and ideal partner.
Yeah, I've come across, and I'm sure you have during your work, because your work is basically making those changes. I know I've come across people that want so much and have just the intention of it'll happen, and being quite destructive with it. And I think myself, I've certainly gone through periods where it's been quite destructive, wanting something, working at it, but in a sense, self-sabotaging. And I've actually found that quite interesting that has happened. So for me, it's something that I definitely want to do, your system, and hopefully come and see you on the Isle of Wight in September. You also do a program, don't you, called Shine, which is kind of an incorporation of these systems. Tell us a bit about that, Brian.
Yeah, Shine is my my sort of openly spiritual program. I run all of my systems as a one-day workshop, or sometimes a keynote presentation, and they're in books, etc. In Shine, I combine them all together, and it's 3 days and 2 nights. I run it in various countries around the world. So I run it in Italy earlier this year. I also run it in Helsinki earlier this year. And in September, I run it in the Isle of Wight. And I have it on September because I like to run it on the equinox, because the program's about balance, and obviously the equinox is that equally distant point between winter and summer. And in Shine, the philosophy is very simple. I created it for the Nordic countries. So I spend such a lot of my time in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and there is a special level of spirituality there, I believe, and a light within the people. And I also see many people holding themselves back. And there is a cultural belief across the Nordic countries called Jantelår. And Jantelår, they grow up with it. It means don't shine too bright. It's not right. If you're doing well, you should hide your light, play down your success, because we all need to be on a sort of an equal footing. And if you're doing too well, that makes other people feel bad. And so they're very minimalistic, the Scandinavians. And it's a great principle in some ways, and it's been very distorted over the years. And when I started going to Scandinavia, and I was invited back again and again and again, I started questioning, why am I here? It wasn't a plan for me to go to Scandinavia. I got invited to start making presentations. People liked my down-to-earth, simple approach. And I was invited back so many times. And so I questioned, why am I here? Why am I in Scandinavia? And I very much came to believe that my spiritual purpose for being in Scandinavia was to be the anti-Jantelår, to help people to actually shine bright, find their inner light, light up their life. Because when you shine bright, but in a spiritual way, where you're not praising yourself overly, but you are being all that you can be, not only do you light up your own life, but you help other people find their way out of the shadows, because you set an example of what can be achieved. And so I've run Shine for many years in Scandinavia, and now I've started to run it in other countries. I tend to go where I'm invited. And within Shine, I combine all of my different mapping systems to help people find their inner brilliance, be their very best, achieve their goals and dreams and wishes. And so we go through the life mapping and the goal mapping and the action mapping, and we teach 3 levels of purpose. Prime purpose, be all you can be. Life purpose, find that thing in life that makes your heart sing. And then higher purpose, leave the world a better place. You bring those 3 together, be your best, find and follow the thing that makes your heart sing, and leave the world a better place. And you find your true power. And you not only help yourself, you help a lot of people around you.
I think that's a wonderful sentiment. I mean, my mind's been drawn to two differences. You know, the way the United States looks at people and encourages, and the way that the UK kind of looks at people and discourages, is what I would say. In the States, you know, the mentality is everybody loves a winner, and people start doing well, and people generally, they're really happy for them, you know, and that's great, and that's great. In the UK, and I know it's changing, but we tend to have the opposite, don't we? If you find someone that's quite good, it's like, oh, well, you know, why do they deserve it? You know, why can't I do that? And we tend to have a kind of resentment of people's successes. And it's something that I certainly believed years ago. I think it's altering, but I think it's still true. What do you think of that, Brian?
Yeah, again, I think it's a cultural belief. It's built up over many years, and are obviously hugely influenced by the people we grow up with. And so it's passed on generation to generation. I certainly noticed in the UK, not only is there resentment often if you're doing well, but if you then fail, as I did publicly, I went from being very successful to losing everything. There is a lot of ridicule often, whereas in America, you are often praised for your failure because at least you've gone out and had a go. It's changed quite a lot now, but in England years ago, if you went bankrupt, that was a real stigma. Whereas in America, if you went bankrupt, they applauded and said, well done for going out there and trying. And each country will have its own beliefs around what is right and what is wrong. And one of the great blessings, I believe, with modern technology is that we are much more able to see the beliefs from different cultures around the world. And gradually, I think people are adopting what they see as good ways of behaving. And that is starting to have a real impact on consciousness. I believe the Nordic countries have something great to teach in how you live a good life. They have great principles of fairness and equality and modesty within what they do. And sometimes that quality of modesty, like hide your light and don't shine too bright, is a detrimental thing, and it holds people back. And so I've been encouraging them, shout about your success, not in a way that you are better than others and putting other people down, but shout loud about, here is a great way to live, because they do have a tremendous quality of life, and they prize that, and they try and help other people have that. And they have their challenges, like other countries do, but they also have a lot of great principles that I believe a lot of other cultures and countries around could learn a great deal from.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We're just going to go into a break now, and if anyone does want to call in, it's or join us in the chat room, it's 702-425-9230, and we'll be back in a moment, talking again more with Brian about his systems and some of the wonderful things that he's achieved, including 4 books in 8 languages. So we'll be straight back after this.
This is the voice of spirit, your connection to the other side.
To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination.
Explore with us by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined.
Back with your guide to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Leo Bonomo.
After these brief words from our sponsors.
Alien Deceptions, a suspenseful sci-fi romance thriller by Tina Marie, featuring the tantalizing Erica Jones and the mysterious Russell Hamilton. An out-of-this-world book of fiction based on years of document facts and files the government does not want you to know about, at least not yet. Alien Deceptions by Tina Marie. Available now at Amazon.com or get a signed copy at TinaMarieEntertainment.com. Get your copy now.
My savings are gone.
Okay, where were they last?
Here, right before I spent them on that vacation to Aruba.
Weird. Not weird. Not saving now means no money later. For free ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil, question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington. Every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
What's going on here?
Welcome, World Wide Web. Hi, everyone.
And everything's going on.
And as we open the show with Dave destroying the studio, welcome to Three Guys, No
It's nothing
Ties.
uncommon. It just, it was bad timing again.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
One of the planet's most powerful antioxidant products is here for you to enjoy. Chaga mushroom tea. This tea has been used as a potent natural health solution for thousands of years. In fact, the Chinese call it king of the herbs. The health value alone is worth a look as Chaga mushroom tea packs a punch with pure vitality and smooth energy. It's 100% wild crafted, safe, and effective. Get it now at arcticchaga.com. That's ARCTICCHAGA.com or call 916-969-2678. That's 916-969-2678. Chaga Mushroom Tea.
Chaga Mushroom Tea.
Order your supply today.
Welcome back to the Voice of Spirit, your connection to the other side.
There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it.
Connect with us on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us live in our chat room at kcorradio.com. To get a free reading during the show, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers, use Skype name KCOR Radio. And now, inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, welcome back for the last section of the show. Having wonderful gentleman Brian Mayne talking to us, very inspirational on all kinds of levels, and it's explaining really something about human nature and how we operate, which is not so obvious, I think, to a lot of people until you look at his systems, until you begin to life map, goal setting. We hear a lot about goal setting in various ways, and I think most people's ideas of goal setting and where they go wrong, and where I used to go wrong certainly, was write it all down. What do you want to achieve? Write a bit of a date, any particular order it's got to go in to achieve where you want to go, and that's it. And not surprisingly for myself, it never worked. Excuse me. It's no wonder that Brian's been so successful. So, welcome back, Brian. How are we?
Thank you.
To last section. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have a quick drink. I seem to have swallowed a fly or something.
Or an orb.
Probably an orb. Yeah, absolutely. Something. Yeah, whatever it was went the wrong way. It's wonderful to have come from where you did, and from a background where you couldn't read or write, business orientated, obviously, and set up this disco, and to get to a point of losing everything and not having the backup, I think, that many people take for granted, being able to read and write, and to take that and make changes for yourself into the great success that you are. I think even if you weren't teaching this kind of system, that life story would be so inspirational to people from the point of view of saying, well, look, sometimes you get kicked hard, get up, do something with life. Because a lot of people, they just give up, don't they? You think, well, this is it, that's my life. And they don't feel inspired to change it.
Yeah, I think it was a combination for me of my life crashing and changing, receiving then a lot of help in the form of personal development and practical tools, which helped me to get back up, but then also having the spiritual experience that I did that gave me a deeper sense of meaning and purpose about what I was doing. And those three things together, if I had had the life crash and not got the personal development, then I would have got back up to some degree, but not in the same way. I think, I would have played a much smaller game in my life. If I had had the life crash and got the personal development, yes, I'd have got back up and I would have done quite well, perhaps, but I certainly wouldn't have excelled in the way that I have without the spiritual experience. And the spiritual experience gave me a level of meaning and purpose about what I was doing that helped me to keep going in the very tough times when I wanted to give up. Because there have been very many tough times. Even in recent years, I've needed to learn that many goals are outside of your control, particularly when the goal involves other people. You can't set goals for your children, not really. You can't set goals for your partner. You can only set goals around yourself. And the thing that most people don't realize about goal setting is that all of us are setting goals at a mental level and manifesting our reality all of the time. The challenge is that most people are doing it unconsciously and are often creating the things they do not want and going into self-sabotage to some degree, as well as creating the things that they do want. And a lot of people don't even realize they're going into self-sabotage because they don't follow through to a complete disaster or failure. They simply reduce their level of success. And it really comes down to the thoughts that they think. If you are thinking about what you don't want, your subconscious and the universe gives you more of it. And if you want to see this in real time, observe a young child. If you watch very young children, toddlers, where their conscious mind isn't developed and their subconscious is at the surface, and if you say to a young child, don't touch, what do? They touch. Because the subconscious mind, like universal conscious mind, doesn't understand don't. And so when we're thinking, I don't want more debt, or I don't want failure, or I don't want to be unhappy, our subconscious and universal conscious mind don't understand that. And they just give us more debt, more failure, more sadness. And so it's really important when we are setting goals, when we are holding intentions, when we are visualizing, when we are making affirmation, that we are thinking about what we want. The goal mapping system I've created captures that positive thought, feeling, and action in the form of a map. And by looking at the map once a day, and as you look at the pictures, say the words, it activates both sides of your brain and it reinforces the positive command onto your subconscious mind to motivate you towards the achievement of the goal. And by focusing your attention on the map, you're also invoking the law of attraction, which spreads out through your map like a lens and draws back those people, situations, and substance that are in harmony with it. That's why the system works. And the reason why it's gone around the world and reached more than 4 million people is because it works. Not because I've had some fancy marketing plan, not because there's been a sales team. I've had none of that. It's all been based on word of mouth recommendation, including speaking to you tonight.
Absolutely, and we've got a common friend, haven't we, Deborah?
Deborah Carey.
I also interviewed her, a lovely lady, been a friend of hers for a while. Again, no coincidences. We're drawn together inextricably to help each other, and I think that's something that I think is quite obvious in what you do. Word of mouth is the most powerful form of advertisement we can get. And to be that successful shows the great potential that this system has, which is being realised by so many millions, as you say, 4 million people. For me, it's also part of a vision of the future. My guide said to me some years ago, in 20 or 30 years, this place, meaning Earth, will be very different. And I think with what you're doing, it's certainly helping us to be inspired to be different, to understand the world in a different way, that it actually functions very differently from what we are taught at school. And again, I go back to the kind of enslavement that we have at school of, this is your level in life. I think it's changed, and I know that you're helping with that. But certainly when I grew up, it's kind of, this is your place, this is what you do, half kill yourself to work. And it's kind of enshrined in us. And I think the wonderful thing with what you do is it's liberating so many people so that people think differently.
We're sold a bit of a lie at school. And it's not done on purpose. But what we are told, and I've heard lots of children repeat it, and they're sort of brainwashed into it. And the lie is, study hard, get the grades, and it will make you successful.
Yeah.
And the truth is that the grades on their own do not make you successful.
Yeah.
There are a lot of children that leave school with good grades and never get a job. There are many more that leave school with good grades, do get a job, and they achieve a type of success, such as financial success, but that doesn't necessarily lead to life success and them being happy. And more, the newspapers and the TV are filled with the headlines about how many gifted, talented, so-called successful people are ending their lives or are struggling with depression or some type of mental challenge because they are not happy. And what we are not teaching at school in a formulated way as a main subject is how to be happy. And really, it is the highest level of success. If we are not happy, we have nothing. And of course, we can't be happy all of the time. In fact, we can't even know what happiness is if we don't experience sadness. We can't appreciate a good time if we haven't gone through a tough time. But learning how to think in ways that help us to feel better about ourselves is fundamentally important to learning how to cope with life's challenges and live life well. And unfortunately, we're just not taught that often enough at school. And the focus has all become around passing exams. Most teachers will tell you we don't even teach the subject in school anymore. We just teach the children how to pass the exam so they can get their quota through the league tables.
Absolutely. You may remember, Brian, because I think we're certainly of a similar age. There were times during the 70s where you were getting quite highly qualified people leaving university who would, for example, go and work on the bins because that's where the money was. You know, they I wouldn't say wasted those qualifications. Highly intelligent people, very qualified, but one of the basics of life, certainly as it was seen then, is where's the most money, and they would do menial jobs like that because they were very, very well paid. So we had a twisted kind of image of it. I've been lucky. I've worked for 5 multimillionaires, and I've known a couple more, and I've only really known one that was happy, and he was happy because he really didn't care about money. He had the right attitude to life. He just happened to be good at making it. And I think what you said really underlines this, that, you know, what is success? Real success is being happy. And I think if you achieve your goals in the way that you want, that extends or underpins that happiness. But the struggle that so many of us are taught is, you know, you've got to have a certain income, you know, you've got to have a certain house, and you've got to have cars, you've got to have the lifestyle. And people achieve the lifestyle but are really not happy. So I think it's a wonderful thing that you're teaching in saying that, you know, once you're happy, and of course to manifest you need to be in a happy place, as we've discussed. But if you're happy, that what you want, you know, in mapping out your life and mapping out your goals, you can achieve.
There are different types of happiness. Casual happiness is when you are happy because the day has turned out the way that you believe it should. So if things fall into place in your day and your day is looking how you believe your day should look, then you're happy. It's sort of a casual happiness. Yeah. When you achieve something, there is also a happiness because there's a sense of, wow, I've achieved that and I'm pleased. But that quickly wears off and then you're chasing the next achievement. The highest level of happiness is purposeful happiness. And purposeful happiness is when you learn to work with your mind and choose to focus on positive thoughts, regardless of whether you are actually having a positive experience in your life or not. And it's not an easy thing to hold a positive thought when you're in a negative situation. But it is absolutely the answer to life's challenges, whether that is generating more happiness or finding a solution to the problems you face, or even generating more income, because we do live in a world where we have a society that demands money for us to live. And if we're going to be responsible and pay our way and provide for those that may depend on us, then obviously we need to earn an income. But that really doesn't come through being negative, and it doesn't come through competing really with others in terms of living life well. We just need to find our own way and find a balance within it. And again, this is what I see so much of in the Scandinavian countries, that they have a greater balance between earning enough. In Sweden, they have a word, lagom, and it means just enough, just right. Not too much, not too little, just enough. And it's sort of minimalistic, it's basic, but it's just enough, lagom.
Yeah.
And it's part of the way they choose to live.
Yeah. And again, I think so many people would be happy in having enough, whatever they would see as enough, as long as I think it isn't corrupted too much by it's kind of enough, but somebody else has got more, because that's a corruption of it, isn't it? Again, I think if you look at nature, everything is provided. A bird finds its food; it has the materials to build a nest. Nature takes care of itself, and I think with man, we've kind of corrupted that system, haven't we? Where we can have an abundance and think, right, well, I've got fields of corn, for example. I can now sell this, and I can make a lot more than I need. Do you think that's a good example of how we go from having enough to kind of corrupting it and making things difficult?
I think it's as it is said in many of the ancient myths and stories, that we had a fall from spirit, and that fall from spirit was really losing our connection with our higher self, and instead the left brain ego become dominant. The ego's a great thing to have. It's a great source of power, but it's an awful leader. And if you look at the worst dictators around the world, they are egotistical, because the ego is the unbalanced animal instinct. And the animal instinct, the survival instinct, is, food and shelter and clothing. When it becomes unbalanced, it's excessive amounts of food and shelter and clothing. It's more. And along with the ego comes all of the egotistical qualities. So it's mine. These are my possessions, my things, and I need them, and I need more than you. Yeah. That is not the way that we are born. When we are born, our brain is in balance. And when our brain is in balance, it's actually our right brain and spiritual qualities that lead. Babies aren't born selfish or wanting more. They're just looking to survive. But as the child becomes older, then often it's the ego that comes out and becomes dominant. And if the child isn't helped back into balance, they become a tyrant. You look at any 2-year-old that's come into that sense of self, and it's all about me and mine. When my little girl was very small, my daughter, and she's now 16, but when she was very small, she could talk, but it was obvious in the way that she talked that she had no sense of self. Her ego wasn't there. If I picked up one of her toys and I'd say, "Whose is this?" She'd say, "It's Shanty's. Her name's Shanty." Yes. Or if she was doing something, I'd say, "Who's doing that?" She said, "Shanty does it." But then there was a moment where she went, "It's mine, and I'm doing it, and these things are mine, and it's all mine." And that was the ego coming out. And of course, when it comes out at first, it's like a wellspring, and it swamps all other qualities. And if you don't help the ego to come back into balance, then the child grows into an egotistical adult that wants to be better than everybody else, have more than everybody else, control everybody else.
Yeah, and I think we all see that in children, don't we? Where they don't want to share a toy, or they want the other's toy. They're playing with it. I've got to have it, and it's very interesting that you've kind of put that into focus, because again, it's something that we've all experienced, we've all seen. If not with our own children, but certainly perhaps our families or friends' children. But we've certainly seen it in others, and others' children, and it's interesting that kind of kicks in, and it's the gentle control of that, isn't it? By parents saying, "No, we must share. This is fine, it's okay," and that imbalance there that creates these personalities.
I think depending on the level of ego in the parents, they either enhance or reduce the level of ego in the children. And the thing that will really propel the ego into high levels is if a child is overly compared to other children. If there's too much pushiness, if the child is being pushed to be the best in sport, in their exams, in the class, in school, if they're being heavily compared to other children, it really damages the child into thinking they're not loved just for being them, they have to be better than others. And that feeds the ego, and the child either becomes very extroverted, wanting to be better than everybody else, or introverted because they feel they're not as good as others. But either way, it creates low self-esteem, where the child becomes unbalanced and grows into an unbalanced adult that has more children and raises them to be unbalanced. And so it's gone on for thousands and thousands of years.
It has. We're drawing to a close now. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you.
Thank you for having me on the show.
It's been my privilege. It really has. Would you like to give out your website URLs again so people can get in contact with you?
www.goalmapping.com or Brian with an I, Mayne, MAYNE.com are the two main websites.
That's fantastic. And I can highly recommend what Brian does, and I'm sure you've been impressed by what he's talked about and his systems. And again, just a simple fact of his life story, or of those experiences that he's had and what he's raised himself to now. It's been an absolute privilege, Brian. We will have you on again.
Thank you.
Sometime in the future. It's been fantastic talking to you. We've got to go now. 2 hours goes all too quick. But thank you very much again, Brian. And we'll speak to you next week.
Bye-bye. Take care.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.